Good evening. I have a quote for you. Learning without thought is labor lost. Does that bring anything to mind for you?
What it suggests to me is sort of rote learning, is learning lists, memorizing maybe, but not really thoughtfully, critically thinking about what you're
Critically thinking. How about that? That's from Confucius. So critical thinking, we've all heard that term. What does that mean to you? Anybody have some thoughts about what critical thinking is?
You form your own thoughts and opinions about things instead of just regurgitating them from somewhere else.
So forming your own thoughts and opinions.
Going beyond surface depth.
Beyond surface, yep.
Looking at abstract ideas related to the topic.
Yep, that fits in. So the in this particular website, what they're talking about is studying something with an open mind. And I think that's the critical part of it is, it's when you think critical, you think judgment, right? I'm going to be critical and I'm going to have a judgment. In order to reach that, you have to have an open mind to start off with. And there's a process you can follow to reach your final judgment and be critical about the information that's out there. So the first thing you need to do is start with a statement of what you're trying to understand. So it may be a problem, it may be something you want to study. You should have a statement of what it is. If you think of something you want to know, you can put that into a short phrase. It doesn't have to be a sentence, but a short phrase, so you agree upon that's what you're really trying to find out. So you might think, why are cars black? That could be something you do a critical exercise on, right? Why do cars come in black? The next step in the process is having a unrestricted, and that's important. You want an open mind, be unrestricted about your discovery process. You want to gather information, right? Because you're trying to make it an opinion. So there's a series of steps you can follow in that discovery process. And if you use this consistently, then you can use this critical thinking process as a way to look at things. So you want to understand based on real evidence, right? So first thing you want to think about is, what do you already know about the topic? Right? That's a good starting point. So first thing you want to do is list out the things you already know. If it's you can go through this process individually, or it could be a group process. In a group process, you can have somebody take down the information and list out what everybody knows. So you can sort of do a brainstorming session. Say, what do we know right now, right? Okay. So once you've already identified what you know, then you want to think about, well, what are the things I want to find out about? Well, we have lots of things we want to know most of the time, but what's something that prevents us from finding out all the information in the world? Access, right? We don't have unlimited resources. We don't have access to things. We don't have time. So we need to determine what's our time frame. What are our resources that we have? Do we have the internet? Get all kinds of information off the internet. Do we have a couple of books that we can go talk to? Do we have an expert that we can call on the phone and say, hey, what do you know about this? Those are the kinds of things you want to do in the next step of the process. Say, okay, what are my resources? Let's marshal those together, figure out what I have, and then come up with a plan of, okay, how am I going to use those resources? Right? So now you've identified those, then you can go gather your information. So make the most of all the resources you have. If you have an expert, talk to them, find out what they know. If you have the internet, you can pull all the information in, you can talk about it as a group, you can look at all this information together. And what you want to do when you're gathering that information is, again, it's that open-minded process. You're a total sponge at this point. I don't know anything, I want to gather as much as I can, and you want to think about questions. What are the questions that are important to me that I can start thinking about to drive me to understanding the issue? So you go through, answer those questions. Put them together, write them down, put them in some organized fashion. And then you want to think about the connections between that information. So anytime you're gathering information, you can start looking at it, do some analysis, think about, well, how does this fit together? What are the important steps? You want to look for those connections. How does that all those disparate parts of information fit together, right? So once you've got those organized, what do you think you want to do next?
Summarize.
Summarize.
Form your opinion.
So are you ready to form an opinion?
Maybe not, I don't know.
No, you want to get there, right? But it's a good point. At that point, you've already sort of questioned, you got your things together. A second round of questioning, sort of further divining that information you have, right? Go into the next round of, let's take another more critical look, parsing things out into really smaller information, and second guess yourself, right? So you think, well, yeah, I thought this was the way it was originally. Now that I've gathered some of this information, I'm going to ask those questions again, ask some other questions, to kind of arrive at the truth of what the real situation is, right? Okay, so the whole point of that is all that information you just gathered, that process, is sort of your foundation for judgment. And at that point, you can say, well, this is what I think. So if you're going through and writing a paper, you know, this is kind of the process you follow when you do a paper of some sort, an essay. You gather all this information, you say, well, this is what I think, this is what my position on this information is. And that's the process to arriving at critical thinking. Now, there's one last part of this that goes into at the end of it. And that's really assessing what you found out, right? Assessing the knowledge you gain. And there's to demonstrate that you've learned something, there's sort of 6 levels of learning, right? The first one, we touched on this at the beginning, right? The first thing about that you learn is you know something, right? It's just knowledge, it's pure knowledge. All you know is you can list, label, identify, that kind of stuff, right? The next step, anybody have an idea what might be next? Further progression? Defining, summarizing, those kinds of things, right? If you can define it and summarize it, that's sort of comprehension. You first have knowledge and you have comprehension, right? And then the next step that you might do, once you comprehend something, what might you do with it?
Theorize.
Sort of theorize, apply, solve, right? You can take that information and actually apply it. Okay, and that's using the learning that you've done. And then, so now that you've applied it, you can apply it, you understand it, you comprehend it. Then the next thing you might be able to do with that is do some compare and contrast, right? Then you can say, yeah, this is, in this situation, this is what I see, in this situation I see this. This is why these 2 different things are different. That's part of the critical things. They're similar, but not exactly the same. You compare and contrast. That's the real analysis part, right? And then the last part, there's 2 more. The next thing is synthesizing, right? Now you can start thinking, let me step beyond what I've learned in this critical part, and now I can go beyond it and think about how it applies to other things and take it to a further reach. And then the very end of that is really the assessment. Now I can assess other similar things. I can compare those and come up with a real assessment and judgment. And that's what you're trying to do in the critical thinking process. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.